much is your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the chance to focus your time on what you do best. Don't waste your time mailing letters or shipping packages. Stamps is there to help. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. Get up to 89% off USPS, UPS, and other carriers, and schedule free package pickups all from one place. Stamps.com also makes it easy to track shipments, manage contacts, and report on how much you send and spend. Over the last 28 years, more than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Don't waste time worrying about being a postage expert or standing in line to drop off letters and packages. Let Stamps.com do what they do best so you can do what you do better. Go to Stamps.com/audio to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.
I just casually looked towards the canal and I saw what I thought was a mannequin.
August 2nd, 1998, the body of a brilliant young scientist is found dead near the campus of Georgetown University. It was a gruesome scene.
Walking up to the body, it became apparent that there had been a sexual assault.
For more than 6 years, D.C. police had no leads and no suspects. Then, another disturbing discovery. She wasn't his only victim.
As these cases went on, the more the victims resisted, the more violent he became.
One man committing a series of heinous crimes against women, but then he just stops. 10 years go by, then 20. What would it take to finally crack the case wide open? I'm Paul Wagner. Join me for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare podcast series, available October 4th on all podcast platforms.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 283 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing very, very well. You and I have so much out right now. We put out a Patreon episode Saturday night on Mark Becker. You know, this was a young man who was battling mental illness when he murdered his former high school football coach.
Yeah. Good episode.
Yeah, it's a good episode. Check that out if you're on Patreon. If you're not, it's a great time to sign up. I think this was episode 49.
Yeah.
So we've got quite a bit out there. And then on True Crime All the Time, we have an episode out right now on Thomas Montgomery. And this is a case that I have had down on my list for 5-6 years. I've wanted to do it for a long time. It's about a man who murders his 22-year-old coworker after getting caught up in a love triangle. There's a catfish situation going on. It's just a very fascinating case. Before we get into our episode, let's go ahead and give our shout outs. For Patreon, we had Sean Anderson.
Hey, Sean.
Alexis.
What's going on, Alexis?
Samantha Summerlin.
Hey, Summerlin.
Cheryl Van Dyke.
What's up, Van Dyke?
Bethany Morgan.
Hey, Bethany.
Patsy Hickman jumped out at her highest level.
Hey, thank you, Patsy.
Chanel Summers.
What's going on, Chanel?
Rose Gold Widow jumped out at her highest level.
What's up, Rose?
Audrey Surlis.
Hey, Surlis.
Alexis Thomas.
Well, appreciate that, Thomas.
Angelina Brooks jumped out to her highest level.
What's up, Brooks?
Leah Biva.
Gotta have a beaver.
Sarah Cart.
What's going on, Cart?
Autumn Smith.
Hey, Autumn.
Edie G jumped out to her highest level.
Appreciate that, G.
Jessica Peckham.
Hey, Peckham.
Tona Ogle jumped out to her highest level.
What's going on, Olga?
Lenoy Shalom.
Hey, Lenoy.
Tanya Carey.
Well, appreciate that, Tanya.
Marion Egermont Swinkles.
Hey, Marion.
And last but not least, Anna Creer jumped out to her highest level.
Well, appreciate that, Anna.
Then if we go back into the vault, This week we selected Ann Lund.
Hey, hi, Ann.
Yeah, so appreciate the continued Patreon support. On PayPal, we had donations from Jamie Zeman,
Hey, Zeman.
our good friend Andrea Papa George,
Papa George.
and William Callis.
Hey, Callis.
So thanks to everyone. Gibbs, I did want to make an announcement that you and I have decided to put episodes of both TCAT and TCAT Unsolved on YouTube.
Yeah.
So there's separate channels for each. They're all episodes that you all have heard, but if you want to help us out, go subscribe to the channel, like some videos. It all helps. We're just trying to see if we can get more people to find the show.
Exactly.
All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We are talking about the disappearance of Diane Augat. Diane Louise Augat went missing on April 10th, 1998. She was last seen at a few different locations in Hudson, Florida. In the days after Diane went missing, a strange and concerning piece of evidence was found in the location where she was last seen. 24 years later, the disappearance of Diane Augat leaves investigators with many more questions than answers. Diane Louise Augat was born on February 21st, 1958. She was 40 years old when she went missing. Diane used several aliases or nicknames, including Jenny L. Augat, Diana Laura Augat, Diane Young, Denise, Jackie, Madonna, and Diana Young.
That's a lot of aliases.
Yeah, it's a lot of different names to use. There's only one other person that I know of that has that many names that they use on a regular basis, and that's you.
Are you referring to me or Rex right now?
Rex, you, and the subset of names that you use. But the one thing I never could figure out, it really wasn't in the research, was why Diane used all these different names. So that's kind of a mystery. At one point, Diane was married with 3 children. She had 2 daughters and a son. According to Diane's mother, Mildred Young, Diane was a stay-at-home mom. In the 70s and early 80s, Diane was married to a man named Frederick Augat, who ran an assisted living facility in Land O'Lakes, Florida.
Hey, Land O'Lakes, isn't that where the butter's from?
That's what the box says. I
no.
don't think they make it in Florida. I don't think they make a lot of butter in Florida.
Probably not. Probably too hot.
Yeah. I think that's more of a Wisconsin thing.
Yeah.
The Tampa Bay Times wrote about Diane. She had once been a meticulous woman whose life centered on her 3 children.
Well, that could be said about a lot of moms.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. You know, a lot of moms and dads, for that matter, you know, their lives center around their children once they have them.
Yeah.
You know, I was the same way. Before I had kids, you know, my wife and I, we had so much freedom.
Oh, my God.
We could do whatever we wanted to, separately or together. And then it was, you know, like once the first child comes along, everything centers around that child.
Yeah.
And then the second one comes along. And then there's even more to take care of. And it just kind of becomes the routine of making sure they have everything they need. Okay, maybe I don't get new clothes because the kids are growing out of there so fast that the money has to go there.
Right. They're the priority.
They are. They really are. Diane's sister, Denise Young, told the Tampa Bay Times she had $100 pocketbooks. She was pretty. There could be 1,000 people in the room, and you'd only notice her. Mildred told news outlets that Diane could be a little too trusting of others. She also said that she liked men with money.
Well, you know, it's easy to be too trusting of others.
Yeah, because you think about that, and it's like you want to trust people because you want all people to be good.
Yeah.
The problem is we know not everybody is. There are some bad apples. There are people out there doing bad things. In the late 80s, Diane was diagnosed with manic depression, now called bipolar disorder. She took her medication sporadically to help manage her symptoms.
Well, taking it sporadically, not always the best way to take that type of medication.
I don't think it's ever the best way to take that type of medication.
Right.
You and I actually talked about this quite a bit on the Patreon episode that came out on Saturday because, in that episode, the individual was prescribed a number of different medications, but wouldn't take them sometimes for months.
Right. If you're not taking them, they can't do the job that they've been prescribed for.
In 1988, Diane lost custody of her 3 children. Prosecutors charged her with child abuse, but she was eventually acquitted. After her acquittal, the State Department of Children and Families made additional allegations against her, and Diane's children were removed from her custody. But here again, all of the sources that we looked at, the research that we did, none of it really went into detail about these allegations that were made against Diane. So we can't really elaborate on them because we didn't find it.
But as a mom that loved her kids, to no longer have those kids in your custody, that's going to have an impact on you.
Yeah, it's going to have a huge impact on you, and you just would love to know what these allegations were. Denise Young told the Tampa Bay Times the crux of her whole mental health issue was losing the children. She put pictures of them on her refrigerator, and she would look at them and stand there and just cry and cry.
I think if you no longer had your kids in your life, you'd probably cry too, right? I know it would be very upsetting to me if I lost my kids.
Dude, I can't even imagine it. Someone forcibly removing my children.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I would handle it. Diane and her husband divorced in 1991. After the divorce, Diane's life began a rapid downward spiral. She was arrested several times for petty crimes and also involuntarily committed under Florida's Baker Act. The University of Florida Health defines the Baker Act as a Florida law that enables families and loved ones to provide emergency mental health services and temporary detention for people who are impaired because of their mental illness and who are unable to determine their treatment needs. Under the Baker Act, a family member, a friend, judge, officer, or doctor can decide if a person needs an involuntary exam or commitment to an institution. It was reported that Diane was taken into custody at least 32 times under the Baker Act.
That's a lot. That's a lot of either friends or somebody in the medical field or family members suggesting that you need to be looked at.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was any secret. Diane struggled with mental health issues. She wasn't taking her medication regularly, and that was definitely true at the time of her disappearance. She also struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. Just a few weeks before Diane went missing, she received treatment at a mental health facility in Florida. Diane's family believes she shouldn't have been released from this facility because she needed institutionalized care. So as we talk about Diane's disappearance, sources differ on dates for the timeline. And this is something that you and I run into on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah.
You can look at 5 or 10 different papers and they will report different dates. And it's kind of hard to decipher what's correct. Normally what we do is we find the most common dates used for a specific event and we go with that.
Right.
So it may be that 4 papers used this date, 2 papers used another one, and another paper used even a different date. We're going to go with the one that was used most often. So Diane Augat was last seen leaving her house around 11 a.m. on April 10th, 1998. She did not have her medication with her when she left her house. Sources differ on if Diane lived in Odessa or Hudson, Florida. The Tampa Bay Times reported that Diane stayed with her sister in Hudson, but based on a number of different sources, it seems like Diane may have had a house in Odessa as well. So that could help explain the discrepancy in information. Diane's sister left home for a doctor's appointment, and she was not there when Diane left. When she returned, Diane was gone, and she never came home that day. So I think as a sister, that would be concerning, especially knowing the information that we've talked about.
Right.
The number of times that she had been committed under the Baker Act, knowing that she didn't have her medication with her.
No.
All of that would be extremely concerning. Diane was seen at 2 restaurants before she went missing. A bartender at the Hayloft Tavern saw her on April 10th. Mildred Young said that the bartender stopped serving Diane because she was walking in circles.
Well, that'd be a good reason to stop serving somebody.
Well, and let's talk about the medication. We said she took it sporadically, but we also know that mixing certain types of medication with alcohol can really intensify its effect. Diane's last confirmed location was in Hudson, Florida, located on US 19. And US 19 is important. It's a central location in Diane's case. Diane was last seen wearing a white tank top, blue shorts, and white sneakers. She had her nails painted a reddish coral color. On April 15th, 1998, less than a week after Diane's family reported her missing, Diane's mother, Mildred, received a phone call from Diane. No one answered the phone, so the call went to voicemail. When Mildred listened to the message, she heard Diane say, "Help, help, let me out." She said she heard a scuffling sound, as if someone took the phone from Diane. And then Diane responded, "Hey, give me that." And then the call suddenly ended. The caller ID indicated that the call came from a business called Starlight.
Can you imagine? You come home, little message lights on, you play it, and you hear that message. Your daughter's been missing now for almost a week. I mean, I think your heart would be pounding out of your chest as you hear that message, trying to understand what is going on.
Now, on the one hand, I think you'd be elated that at the very least, you know she's alive. But to your point, you got to go into scramble mode, almost detective mode, trying to figure out what this message means. These little snippets.
Yeah.
Help, help, let me out. Okay, that doesn't sound good.
No.
And then if someone takes the phone away and Diane says, "Hey, give me that," and then all of a sudden the call is over. You don't have much to go on, but you'd be racking your brain trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean? And then once you find out that it came from Starlight, well, what the heck is Starlight?
Yeah.
Now, of course, Diane's family tried to call the number back, but no one answered. And we didn't find anything in the research where either Diane's family or the police, for that matter, ever figured out what the Starlight was or where it was actually located. On the day that Diane called her family, a waitress at the Inn on the Gulf in Hudson claimed she saw Diane eating lunch at the restaurant. And then the very next day, on April 16th, 1998, a severed finger was found near the intersection of US 19 and New York Avenue in Hudson, Florida. A local man's girlfriend actually saw the finger on the night of the 15th while she walked to work along US 19. She was concerned by what she saw, but she thought it was a fake finger. And we have heard this so many times over the years in episodes. A lot of times it's somebody who sees a body and believes that it must be a mannequin.
Right.
Because I think naturally your brain just doesn't want to go to, oh, well, sure, that's a dead body or that's a severed finger.
Yeah, you don't want to believe that.
No, it must be a mannequin. It must be a fake finger.
No, I think some of our listeners today probably would think otherwise now.
Well, I think with the proliferation of true crime, podcasts, the shows, the documentaries, everything that we've learned, we're all now quasi-forensic experts and we're hunting and we're trying to solve cases. I think today, a lot of people's minds probably go the other way.
Exactly.
That probably is a dead body.
Yeah.
Or that probably is a severed finger.
And they get over there and like, oh, it's just a mannequin.
or it's a burlap sack that somebody threw out the window or whatever. But I want to talk about this woman walking to work, sees this on the ground, thinks, okay, somebody's throwing a fake finger on the ground. I'm not even going to check that out.
Right.
Because I don't believe it's real. I'm going to keep walking. I got to get to work. But she must have told her boyfriend about it after work, because he went to the spot the next day to look for this finger. And when he found it, he called the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. According to the Doe Network, a second finger was observed by someone, but the police only found one at the scene. And it was said that the finger had been severed above the knuckle. Fingerprints were taken, and the finger was identified as belonging to Diane Augat. We mentioned it, right? Diane was wearing coral nail polish when she went missing, and this finger that was found on the ground had coral nail polish.
So we got her on tape, this weird message, right? Let me out. Sounds like something really bad happened. We just don't know when the finger was severed.
Yeah, I think your first inclination is to think that it most likely happened after the phone call, sometime that night. But we don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to Gibby and I talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year. So you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Don't be a copycat entrepreneur. Unleash your killer business idea to the world with Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. That's the Shopify sound, and they make it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether you're selling your own podcast merch or some true crime-related handcrafted items on Etsy, start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. Shopify allows you to customize your online store to your brand, discover new customers, and build the relationships that will keep them coming back. Shopify covers all sale channels, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. They have 24/7 support, and Shopify is there to help you succeed every step of the way. I can tell you firsthand, selling podcast merch around the world is not an easy thing to do. When we switched to Shopify 4 or 5 years ago, it simplified the process so much. It turned what was really kind of nightmarish into something very easy. Now it's your turn to try Shopify for free and start selling anywhere. This is possibility powered by Shopify. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/unsolved, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/unsolved to start selling online today. Shopify.com/unsolved. After this discovery, Mildred Young spoke with the Tampa Bay Times and told them that Diane had a habit of trusting strangers. Mildred believes that Diane was kidnapped and said she is in trouble, big trouble. They're probably torturing her. I'm hoping that she's still alive and that they haven't killed her yet.
Well, if they cut her finger off at the knuckle, it sounds like torture to me.
But to what end?
Yeah.
You know, that's the first thought that goes through my mind is, why are you torturing someone who doesn't really seem to have a lot? She wasn't rich at this point in her life. Did she have some kind of valuable information that someone was trying to, get from her? Obviously, it wasn't a ransom situation where someone would cut off a digit and send it as proof that, if you don't pay up. And obviously there was no ransom demand either,
Right.
but I'm just trying to run through a bunch of different scenarios. I'm not really sure what the reasoning would be.
Maybe it was somebody just being cruel.
Well, that's true. And I don't think you can discount that factor. You and I on TCAT have profiled a lot of people who did things that were very sadistic just for the mere, I don't want to say fun of it, but just to be cruel.
Yeah.
There was no other motive behind it, for their own enjoyment. So detectives considered two possibilities up front. One was foul play, and the other was that Diane was in some type of an accident and lost her finger. On April 17th, the police searched the area where the finger was found. They didn't find Diane, and they really didn't find any additional evidence. So it was just like the finger, and that was it. Over the weekend after Diane's finger was found, the police received 38 calls. Most of these were from people who thought they saw Diane in different locations. The police investigated the calls, but they didn't find her. Just one day later, a bag of neatly folded clothes belonging to Diane was found in the freezer of a convenience store in Odessa, Florida. On April 18th, Totally Convenient store manager Patricia Splendorio found a bag of clothes in the store's outdoor freezer. Right away, she recognized them as Diane Augat's clothes because apparently Diane was a frequent customer of this convenience store.
So you're just going about your normal day at the convenience store, and you go out to the outdoor freezer, and boom, right there, a bag full of clothes in your outdoor freezer.
And then to make the connection to Diane Augat because she was a frequent customer. That's kind of amazing, really, when you think about it.
But why put the clothes in that freezer?
Yeah, it's a great question because you know they're going to be found. So I think you have to look at it along those lines. If this was somebody who did something to Diane, naturally, you would assume they would want to discard those clothes in an area where no one would find them, maybe even burn them. But that's not what we're talking about here. You know those clothes are going to be found, and they're going to be found very quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we have to at least keep in the back of our minds as we go through this. Patricia called Diane's sister, Deborah Cronin, who also identified the clothes as Diane's. And Deborah knew because she had given Diane some of these clothes. Kevin Dahl, a sheriff spokesman, told the Tampa Bay Times that some of the juveniles who hung out with Diane at her home in Odessa might have put the clothes there. These same juveniles were suspected of looting Diane's home after her disappearance. But here's the thing, police have come out and said they don't know if the clothes were planted at the store before or after Diane went missing. Patricia told the police that the last time she checked the freezer was 3 weeks before she found the clothes.
That's a long time without checking that freezer.
Yeah, and I guess I was wrong when I said that you know they're going to be found quickly. I'm assuming if you've got a freezer that's outside, it's going to be checked on a daily basis.
You would think.
In this case, that's not how it went. That same day, the police received a tip that some of Diane's things were stolen from her house in Odessa. Diane allegedly allowed people to have parties at her Odessa house before she went missing, which could explain how so many people knew where she lived and were able to get into her house. And to me, this goes back to, a comment that Diane's mother, Mildred, made to the paper, that she was very, very trusting of people.
Yeah.
And so maybe she did let people in and out of the house, let them have access.
Maybe she put the clothes there.
Could be.
Maybe she cut off her own finger.
At this point, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
On April 30th, the police announced that they found a witness who reported seeing Diane on US 19, near where her finger was found on April 11th. The witness saw her walking north near New York Avenue between 3 and 4 p.m.
So this witness saw her 4 days before the finger was found.
And 4 days before the phone call was made. Now, I don't know what to make of that information other than Obviously, she was alive on April 11th, but we already knew that because she made the phone call. John Powers, a sheriff's office spokesman, said that the information was important because it added another day of information to their timeline. Powers told the press, "I wouldn't classify it as a quantum leap by any means, but every little bit helps." So I guess I get that. You now know where she was on April 11th, and any bit of information is good. I get that part, but it's definitely not a quantum leap.
No, not at all.
Unfortunately, Diane's case went cold after this. The sheriff's office had spoken with over 100 people, and they'd followed up on a number of leads, but no one reported seeing her to the police again, and she never made another phone call. The police and Diane's family worried that she was dead as the months passed. It would be 2 more years before there was an update in Diane's case. And again, something you and I have talked about. You have to have hope in a disappearance case. But as the months go on and you have no new information, you don't hear from your loved one, there's no one reaching out to say, "Oh yes, I saw her here."
Right.
I think it would be very tough for your mind not to go to that place that we've got to expect the worst. Because we're talking months and months now with no contact.
Yeah. And you know that at one point she calls and leaves this frantic voicemail. There's a finger found on the side of the road. Outside of that, and when you know she doesn't have her medication and you're not hearing from any hospitals where she's been admitted, so you have to be concerned.
The authorities investigated a tip in October 2000, but it turned out to be a dead end. Mildred thinks that Diane knew the person that abducted her. She also fears the worst possible outcome, that someone killed Diane and cut up her body.
Well, that would be a worse outcome.
That's worst possible scenario. In November 2000, the St. Petersburg Times ran a story on Diane's disappearance. Just 1 day later, a bag of personal items was found at a Circle K convenience store in Pasco, Florida. On November 25th, 2000, a woman named Terry Wilson entered the Circle K convenience store in Pasco, Florida to buy cigarettes and a soda. She found a clear plastic bag on top of the lottery counter. She took the bag to her car, and when she looked at it, she saw Diane written on it in black marker. The bag contained eyeliner, perfume, lipstick, and toothpaste. Terry Wilson was the girlfriend of Diane Augat's brother. Diane had been missing for 2 years at this point. Terry Wilson took the bag to Mildred Young. Mildred was devastated, but held out hope that the bag didn't belong to Diane.
It's very strange that Terry found this bag at a convenience store just laying on top of a counter this far after Diane's been missing.
Well, strange in the fact that she's Diane's brother's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Not just a random stranger.
Just the fact that that bag's there seems strange.
Well, that's true.
And then you have the fact that she's the one that finds it. It's unbelievable.
This Circle K is located near Viva Villas, a neighborhood that Diane used to visit fairly often. 3 months before Diane went missing, around January 1998, Diane was picked up by police officers who found her wandering near Viva Villas. They returned her to her mother's house. Mildred Young said that the items found in the bag seemed like things that Diane would have owned. Diane was given a tube of similar-looking toothpaste when she was released from a psychiatric hospital not long before her disappearance. But investigators have not been able to confirm if the items really belonged to Diane or not. Less than a year later, a man connected to Diane's case was arrested for murder. The Coral Sands Motel, where Diane was last seen, was managed by Gary Robert Evers and his girlfriend Rose Casper. In 2001, Evers was charged with murder after shooting and killing a man during an argument. He is considered a suspect in Diane's disappearance, but was never charged with anything. At 4 a.m. on Wednesday, June 27, 2001, two armed men wearing ski masks entered the office of the Coral Sands Motel. Rose Casper, the manager, shouted to her boyfriend, "He's got a mask." The two men began beating Rose. Gary Robert Evers, the co-manager, came out of the back room, and the two men fled. And then just before midnight, on June 28th, Evers confronted the man he believed was involved in the attack, 26-year-old Todd Cammers. Todd's family last saw him at 9 p.m. on the 28th. A driver had run out of gas on US 19. Cammers rode his bike to his parents' house to borrow their gas can, then rode to the local 7-Eleven to buy gas and help the driver out. At the time, Cammers was on probation for a burglary conviction. After 11 p.m., Evers invited Cammers into the motel office, which was basically a mobile home that he and Rose lived in. Evers asked Cammers if he was one of the men who attacked Rose. He then pulled out his gun and shot Cammers multiple times, emptying his 9mm handgun. Evers put a new magazine into the gun and fired until it was empty.
That would be extreme.
I would use the word overkill. Todd Cammers had a criminal record for burglary, battery on a law enforcement officer, selling in possession of marijuana, trespassing, aggravated battery, and burglary of an automobile.
So not an upstanding citizen.
No, he's got a pretty lengthy rap sheet. He was last charged with burglary in February 2000. But although Todd Cammers had a troubled life, his family told papers that he had a daughter and a long-term girlfriend whom he loved very much, and that he went out of his way to help others. He did ride his bike to get gas for somebody who ran out of gas.
It sounds like he was trying to do the right thing.
At least in that instance. According to TampaBay.com, Gary Evers had no official criminal record. Many people considered him to be a pretty nice guy, but it did seem as though he had a violent temper. In October 1999, sheriff's deputies responded to a report of aggravated assault at the Coral Sands Motel. A man reported that he went to the motel to look for a woman he met at a strip club. When he asked Evers about this woman, Evers pointed two guns at him and said, "How dare you mess around with another man's woman?" No charges were filed.
Well, maybe he did have a little temper.
And maybe he had a habit of very quickly pulling out guns on people. On June 29th, Gary Evers was charged with first-degree murder. The police did not confirm if Cammers was one of the men involved in the attack. And so I want to go back and touch on this Todd Cammers. The one thing that really stuck out to me was that if he was in fact involved in this attack at the Coral Sands Motel, why in the world would he accept an invite from Gary Evers?
Exactly. You know it's not going to be good.
At the place where he had allegedly committed this violent act.
Yeah.
What good is going to come from whatever this meeting is going to be? That just did not make sense to me at all. Now, I don't know what the premise of the invite was. I don't know what was said, but you'd have to be a real sweet talker to get me to enter that trailer knowing that I had done something really bad at that location.
I would just think there's no reason for me to go into that trailer. I'm not going.
No. And so I'm really stupefied by that whole situation. It makes me think that Todd Cammers was probably not involved in the assault. I have no idea why Gary Evers thought he was, what evidence he had. But what's not in doubt is that he shot this man to death and used 2 full magazines to do it.
Yeah. He just couldn't be satisfied with a couple shots.
You know, Gibbs, I have a habit of disappearing after dinner sometimes. I don't mean disappearing from the house. I disappear down into the studio. My family thinks that I'm working on the podcast, and most of the time I am. But, you know, sometimes I just go down to play Best Fiend. I love this game. You've heard me talk about it for quite a long time now. If you have not tried it out, what are you waiting on? I'm closing in on level 400. This game is so easy just to pick up and play a few levels whenever you have time. And I never get tired of that feeling of striving to get to the next level. Best Fiends is a free-to-download mobile puzzle game with thousands of exciting levels for new adventures and challenges every time you play. I love the Fiends. There are dozens of unique fiends. You can customize them. You can power them up with even more powerful skills. There's offline play, so losing your internet connection won't slow you down. And they do a great job of coming up with brand new events and challenges all year round. So there's always a chance for you to earn exclusive in-game items, characters, and rewards. Download your new favorite getaway, Best Fiends, for free today on the App Store or Google Play. You'll even get $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. Gary Robert Evers is also a main suspect in the disappearance of Diane Augat. After his arrest, the police called Diane's sister, Deborah Cronin, and told her that he had been arrested. So we know that Diane was last seen at the Coral Sands Motel, where Gary Evers and Rose Casper had been managers since 1997. The hotel was located on US 19. Couldn't actually figure out if it's still there. It didn't come up in my searches. But that's where Diane was seen walking and where her finger was found. Her finger was found just 1 block from the motel. According to Mildred Young and Deborah Cronin, the first detective who worked the case informed Deborah that Evers was a suspect and Diane was last seen at the Coral Sands Motel. According to the Tampa Bay Times, after Evers was charged, Deborah asked the detective if there was anything in his home that linked him to Diane, and the detective told her she might have to look at some items from the home. The problem is we never could find anything that came from it, and that's most likely because this case is unsolved.
Yeah.
On July 12, 2001, Evers was indicted for the murder of Todd Cammers. Todd Cammers' family was adamant that he was not one of the men who attacked Rose Casper. On September 28, 2001, Todd's family received confirmation that he wasn't involved. The sheriff's office charged Edwin Humphrey with the assault and attempted robbery and implicated a second man. A sheriff's office spokesman declined to comment on if Cammers was officially cleared as a suspect, but said that the investigation was complete. Edwin Humphrey was already in jail for carjacking, kidnapping, and armed robbery. On June 25th, Humphrey and 3 other accomplices kidnapped, beat, and robbed a cab driver. Humphrey was then charged for attacking Rose Casper. He was charged with armed burglary, attempted armed robbery, conspiracy to commit robbery, and aggravated battery.
Some real winners here.
Yeah, we got a lot of bad people here. An 18-year-old man named Robert Hay helped plan and participated in the attempted robbery and assault, but Robert Hay would never be charged because he was found dead on July 4th, 2001 on the side of a road. The police believe that Hay was killed on June 29th or 30th. Hay was also wanted for the same carjacking incident on June 25th. According to police, Hay and Humphrey entered the motel office wearing masks and armed with a shotgun and pellet gun. They demanded money and threatened Rose Casper. Humphrey hit her in the face with the gun. So it sounds like they can't come out and conclusively say it, but police don't believe that Todd Cammers was involved in this. His family doesn't believe he was involved in this. And that makes total sense to me. Let's go back to what we just talked about.
Yeah.
If he was involved, why in the world would he step foot inside the trailer with Evers? That just doesn't make sense. And I think sometimes you have to look at some of these cases from that angle. What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? Can we conclusively rule out everything using that? No. Does it work more often than not? I would say yeah.
Yeah. Common sense.
On March 22nd, 2002, Edwin Humphrey was sentenced to life plus 15 years for the attempted robbery and battery of Rose Casper. Rose spoke in a prepared statement and said that she managed to take Humphrey's gun and shoot at him, but since it was a pellet gun, he survived. Humphrey received a life sentence because he was a repeat offender.
I was going to say, that's a pretty hefty sentence.
Life plus 15
Yeah,
years.
but, being a repeat offender,
Well, and it's good to see. You can argue whether the sentence is fair or not. What I would say is that too many times we've seen where somebody's previous 8,000 convictions didn't seem to be factored in what they've done now.
Yeah.
And they get a slap on the wrist. This was no slap on the wrist.
This judge did the right thing.
And apparently on his way out of the courtroom, Humphrey told the judge, "Thanks for the life sentence, asshole." Humphrey also faced the death penalty for the murder of Robert Hay, but he eventually pleaded guilty and received another life sentence. So you said a bunch of bad guys. Obviously, this Humphrey dude, he was into some bad stuff.
Yeah.
Gary Robert Evers was convicted of murdering Todd Cameras on April 28, 2004. Evers was sentenced to life without parole. He testified that he invited Todd into the motel trailer. He thought Cameras ran the neighborhood and would have information about who attacked Rose. They talked for 3 hours, according to Evers, and Cameras drank heavily from a bottle of vodka. Evers testified that he knew Todd wasn't involved in the robbery, but Cameras threatened him and said that another robbery would not happen if he was allowed to live at the motel. Evers' defense argued that he thought Todd Cameras was reaching into his pocket to get a gun, so he shot him first. In total, Todd Cameras was shot 11 times while he sat at the kitchen table inside the trailer. It turned out Todd had no weapons on him at all. He was also extremely drunk when he died. His blood alcohol content level was 0.35. So you add all of this evidence up, and it really discredited the self-defense theory, and it led to Evers' conviction.
Well, 11 times. How many times you have to shoot somebody?
Well, I guess it depends on the situation. What I will say is 11 times makes it really tough to argue self-defense.
For sure.
When it turns out that a guy has no weapon, he's so drunk that I doubt he could have stood up. There's just no way to mount a defense against that type of evidence.
At the point you drop your magazine and pop another magazine in, he's still not moving. Why keep shooting?
But I want to hear what you think about this Evers testimony that, he just invited Todd in because he thought he would have information. And then it turned into a self-defense scenario where he thought Todd was going to pull a gun. I'm not buying it.
Not at all.
I think he invited Todd because he thought Todd assaulted Rose and he planned to kill him.
Yeah.
But of course, he doesn't want to get on the stand and say that.
No.
Gary Robert Evers was never charged with anything in relation to Diane's case, and he never confessed that he was involved. Evers is now deceased. He most likely passed away on May 1st, 2012. That's the date that is listed as his date out custody in the Florida Department of Corrections records. But he was the only confirmed suspect in Diane's disappearance. And my fear, Gibbs, is that, unless someone comes forward with what they know, Diane's case will remain open, but it will remain cold without any new leads. Diane Augat would be 64 years old if she were alive today. Crime Stoppers of Tampa Bay is currently offering a $3,000 reward for information. You can submit a tip online or call 1-800-873-TIPS. You can also contact Sergeant Hatcher, Detective Koenig, or Detective Harris at the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. So as we wrap up this case, Gibbs, it's a very confusing one. It's a little bit baffling. I don't think there's any doubt that Diane Augat had some issues. She had some things going on in her life.
She might have trusted the wrong people.
She might have. She was definitely battling some mental health issues. It sounds like she was not taking her medication regularly. And maybe that had something to do with making some bad decision that ultimately, led to what happened to her. We don't even know that she's dead.
We don't.
But it's hard to believe. sadly, that she would be alive after all these years. It sounds to me as though, she had a family support system who really cared about her. They were trying to help her. We just don't really know what happened to her that day. I think, you think about the mystery of the phone call and obviously the finger.
Very, very strange.
Yeah, those are the two things that kind of really jump out in this case. The problem is it's hard to put them into context because we don't have any of the information that would go around them or with them.
Right. And you kind of need that.
You kind of need that to make sense of the phone call. Help, let me out. Give me that. Okay. You can make some assumptions.
Right.
That she was being held against her will. But if that was the case, how's she talking on the telephone? Why would somebody allow her to talk on the telephone? Or did she get to it? Someone realized that and then yanked it out of her hand. And that's where the, hey, give me that comes from.
Or maybe the, hey, give me that is, give me my finger back.
I don't know, man. I just don't know. There's too much missing.
Yeah.
Sadly, that happens quite a bit in the unsolved cases. But that's it for our case on the disappearance of Diane Augat. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hello, my name is Tammy. I was just calling. I've been listening to the unsolved episodes. Just finished with the McClung episode. You guys were talking about the name of a brother of Nimrod. I found it interesting that I have actually met two people with the first names of Dorcas for their birth name, and that is another name that has negative connotations to it, and just makes me wonder how parents could do that to a child. Just wanted to let you know, keep your head on a swivel and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Now, I can honestly say I've never met anyone named Dorcas.
I don't know, Nimrod.
But she knows two people.
Named Dorcas?
Yeah. And I did hear you call me Nimrod. I just passed over it like it didn't happen.
Podcast is amazing and helping me get through today because I'm sick. I'm here with my cat Pancakes. You and Saving Private Ryan have been getting me through today. It's been a bit rough, but thank you. You all have a good day and keep your own time ticking.
Wow, sick and takes the time to call in.
Yeah.
Now, I appreciate it. The podcast will get you through some stuff, but so will Saving Private Ryan. It's a great movie.
And obviously Pancakes.
And Pancakes.
That's right.
That's a cool name for a cat.
It is.
I dig it.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. It's Tiffany from Florida, and I'm just calling because I'm going to have a lot of time in the next couple of days to listen to the podcast because the hurricane is headed right for me. So I'm just driving around town trying to find water because it's like COVID all over again, people taking all the water and toilet paper. But I'm excited to re-listen to all of TCAT and finish Unsolved. I'm looking forward to it. Just wanted to call in and say, woohoo, go Hurricane!
So I should have mentioned it up front, Gibbs, but it did kind of hit me. We're doing a case in Florida.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of people in Florida that are in the path of some pretty dangerous weather.
For sure.
My partner on criminology, Morph, had to evacuate already.
Yeah.
We had to record early in the week. So we hope everybody stays safe down there. What I will say, and I thought this was really nice of you, is that Gibby has offered to house anybody that has to relocate from Florida, and I will give his address out at the end of this episode.
Oh yeah. I'm that type of guy.
I thought that was very nice of you to offer it up. You don't have a huge place, but I mean,
the whole family.
It may be wall to wall sleeping bags, but what a fun time.
Put a family in every room, or maybe two families per room. I don't know.
You don't have that many rooms.
I don't.
But, all joking aside, everybody stay safe, follow the instructions. If they tell you to get out, get out.
Exactly.
Because
just be careful.
It could get really bad. You and I are taping pretty early. So by the time this comes out, the storm could be much worse.
One thing I learned about a hurricane is when you're driving, make sure you put your top up, your convertible. Don't leave it down. Because you will get flooded inside your car.
Yeah, that's good advice too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what most people are worried about in the path of a hurricane.
I'd like to give little tidbits.
Is there convertible?
Yeah. Close your moonroof too.
All right, everyone. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
This month, celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with Pluto TV. Watch movies with the biggest stars like Eugenio Derbez in No Eres Tú, Soy Yo, and Luis Gerardo Méndez in Camino a Marte. Plus, Pluto TV has thousands more movies and TV shows and over 45 channels in Spanish, all for free. So download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming today. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.